In the treasure domain Infinite Space, Luo Feng flew through remote regions at incredible speed, deliberately avoiding territories occupied by major powers and searching for a place suitable for solitary cultivation. He eventually arrived at 100 Mist Lake, an enormous region that once housed over 100 native creatures but had gradually declined after being monopolized by the monarch of the Thunder Ancient Country. Because only a few creatures remained, the major forces had abandoned the area, making it ideal for a lone cultivator like Luo Feng. Luo Feng released 9 avatars to thoroughly investigate the entire lake. During his century of secluded cultivation, he had been focusing on creating the great Tao of life and death. His progress in this path had surpassed his expectations because he had already accumulated profound understanding in both the Tao of life and the Tao of destruction, and because he fundamentally believed that life and death were inseparable. His earliest enlightenment and techniques, including the blade technique, heart honing, had all originated from this concept, although there was no established great Tao of life and death for him to observe or imitate. Luo Feng followed his own heart and continuously integrated insights from the Taos of life and destruction, naturally creating many techniques. He believed that this path suited him more than either life or destruction alone, and its growth had already surpassed his achievements in the other 2 paths despite lacking complete branches or formal secret techniques. Rather than forcing a breakthrough, he followed the teachings of the world life form inheritance, patiently accumulating comprehension until a natural advancement would occur. After completing his investigation of 100 Mist Lake, Luo Feng discovered that 2 godly kings already occupied separate regions while 3 native creatures remained in the unclaimed areas. 2 of these creatures were relatively ordinary, while the third was exceptionally powerful and had only suffered minor injuries from his direct use of the Lai Yuan technique. Delighted by the opportunity to challenge stronger opponents, Luo Feng decided to occupy all 3 territories simultaneously using his avatars. Meanwhile, in the Flame-Wind Ancient Country, inside Wind Jong City, the Jong family warmly hosted Morosa and Moyu Qingyan. The purpose of the gathering was to discuss the marriage between Zhang Yunge and Moyu Qingyan, which would create a connection between the Zhang family and Great Saint Luohe. 2 primal chaos overlords of the Zhang family personally attended the banquet, a clear indication that they highly valued Moyu Qingyan's background. Morosa explained that Moyu Qingyan was both his master's disciple and his own disciple, making Zhang Yunge practically his half-disciple after the marriage. Moyu Qingyan and Zhang Yunge quietly listened as the elders conversed. Zhang Yunge privately admitted that the clan had never paid much attention to her and that the current treatment was entirely due to Moyu Qingyan's status. Despite his high standing, Moyu Qingyan remained humble. He understood that all his achievements came from the guidance and resources provided by his master and second master. He never considered himself exceptionally talented and therefore had no reason to be arrogant. Zhang Yunge was pleased with his sincerity, as she had gradually fallen in love with him after spending time together during her assignment in Shangji City. Both had reached the eternal true God level before deciding to become Taoist companions. Back in Infinite Space, Luo Feng remained completely focused on cultivation and was sitting on an island while using the Great Destruction heart refining technique to eliminate the spiritual pollution within himself. The stronger the spiritual beings he encountered, the stronger the contamination they left behind, to the point that it repeatedly disrupted his comprehension of the great Taos. At that moment, an immense consciousness entered Luo Feng's territory. Luo Feng immediately declared that the region belonged to him and ordered the intruder to leave. The newcomer, a large yellow-robed figure whose spiritual will had reached the 2nd realm of godly king level, sneered and claimed that he had occupied and repeatedly hunted the ancestor of this native creature for countless years. Recognizing Luo Feng, he mocked him as merely a transcendence of primal chaos realm cultivator who dared to contend with an elder godly king for territory and demanded that he leave immediately if he wished to live. Luo Feng's eyes turned cold as he replied that he wanted to see just how capable this first realm godly king truly was within Infinite Space. Luo Feng encountered the immense yellow-robed figure of the Wuang Elder inside Infinite Space and was surprised that his first meeting with one of the Shi Kingdom's godly kings happened in Yuan's treasure land. Among the 5 godly kings of the Shi Kingdom, the Wuang Elder ranked 2nd in strength and, together with the Emperor of Tian Kun and the ancestor of the Blade Demon, had once destroyed the Jin state and become the mortal enemies of the mountain-sitting guest. The Wuang Elder felt jealous and resentful because he had sacrificed greatly and relied on the help of his elder brother to gain entry into infinite space. While Luo Feng, still only at the primal chaos realm, had also obtained a qualification. Believing that Luo Feng was overestimating himself, the Wuang Elder decided to kill him. Since death inside infinite space meant losing the opportunity to remain there and required another precious entry qualification, Luo Feng also intended to destroy the Elder's body and deprive him of that opportunity. The Wuang Elder carefully analyzed the situation and believed Luo Feng could not have reached a high level on the newly blazed paths within infinite space. He then used his newly created Great Tao technique, the Flame of Sin, causing invisible, colorless flames to ignite on Luo Feng's body and spiritual will. The flames burned both his physical body and soul simultaneously. Luo Feng's spiritual will was already extremely powerful and, under the protection of the Lai Yuan technique, the flames could not harm it. His physical body, however, underwent continuous destruction and rebirth. His godly king-level body refining method, Life and Death Body, treated the flames as a form of tempering, annihilating weaker parts of his body and generating stronger replacements. In only a short time, his body rapidly adapted and became more resistant to the flame of sin. Satisfied with the effectiveness of his newly comprehended life and death body, Luo Feng counterattacked. He used his godly king-level blade technique, one strike two divisions, and sent out a silk-like blade light containing both the vitality of life and the destructive force of severance. The strike sliced through the Wuang Elder's body, forcing him to transform into a body of flames to survive. Even then, the lingering blade force continued to wear him down before he finally extinguished it. The Wuang Elder was shocked that a primal chaos realm cultivator had blazed a path capable of reaching the godly king level and questioned why Luo Feng had not yet become a godly king. Luo Feng simply replied that there was no need to rush and asked how many of his strikes the elder could endure. Luo Feng then activated Life Unending and instantly split into 36 avatars. The Wuang Elder immediately realized that Luo Feng must possess even more avatars outside infinite space and understood that destroying Luo Feng's opportunities there would be nearly impossible. The 36 avatars simultaneously executed one strike two divisions, Life and Death Reincarnation. Their blade lights formed a heavenly net around the Wuang Elder, continuously slashing him. The attacks were both destructive and endlessly recurring, repeatedly returning like a cycle of reincarnation. Unable to escape, the Wuang Elder panicked and begged Luo Feng to stop. He offered compensation, first proposing treasures worth 1 million merit points and then increasing the offer to 5 million merit points. He even apologized and tried to negotiate. Luo Feng remained unmoved. The Wuang Elder was one of the three sovereigns of the Shi Kingdom and therefore one of his master's greatest enemies. After more than 10 breaths of continuous slaughter, the Wuang Elder's flame body was completely extinguished. Before disappearing, he glared at Luo Feng with madness and hatred. Luo Feng calmly regarded the result and considered it only an appetizer. This was his first direct confrontation with one of the three sovereigns of the Shi Kingdom. Back in Wushang City of the Shi Kingdom, the real Wuang Elder erupted in fury. His enraged roar spread throughout the palace, terrifying everyone present. He lamented that Luo Feng had destroyed his opportunity in infinite space, where he still possessed more than 20 reward points and could have earned even more valuable resources. The elder was furious that Luo Feng had refused his apology and compensation. He recognized that Luo Feng's strength in the real world would only be greater because the origin Great Tao was not sealed there. Nevertheless, he declared that he was not afraid, even if Luo Feng became an overlord in the future. Determined to retaliate, the Wuang Elder decided to investigate Luo Feng thoroughly. He planned to gather all information about Luo Feng, his close associates, and his disciples through the Two Realms Palace, intending to discover and exploit any weaknesses. Meanwhile, inside the Star Tower in Chu capital, Luo Feng reflected on the battle. He acknowledged that although he had destroyed the Wuang Elder's body in infinite space, the Elder's strength was genuinely formidable and had already reached the godly king level on a newly blazed path. Luo Feng reminded himself not to become arrogant. His great Tao of life and death still had not fully developed into a complete branch of the great Tao, and he knew that infinite space concealed many ancient experts who had pioneered powerful new paths. He decided to continue cultivating in seclusion for another 100 eras and then consume the primordial crystal spirit fruit again while also using the bottle of clearing spirit liquid. Emperor Chu had previously informed him that the clearing spirit liquid was even more precious than a primordial crystal spirit fruit and that even elite members of the imperial clan received only small portions of it. Luo Feng took out a primordial crystal spirit fruit and began eating it while placing the golden bottle of clearing spirit liquid beside him. After the fruit nourished his soul and greatly accelerated his thinking speed, he uncorked the bottle and drank the entire contents in one gulp, preparing to use these treasures to advance his cultivation even further. After drinking the clearing spirit liquid, Luo Feng immediately felt a profound change within his soul. The liquid spread naturally through his body and directly affected his spirit. Although his master had already explained some of its uses, he was still shocked by its effectiveness. The primordial crystal spirit fruit could only increase thinking speed by 20 or 30 times while maintaining a high level of comprehension. But the clearing spirit liquid targeted the soul itself. Its true function was to cleanse the mind by washing away distracting thoughts. Luo Feng recalled his experiences in infinite space. Whenever he clashed with the wills of spiritual beings there, his own spirit would become contaminated, and he had repeatedly cleansed those external impurities. However, he now realized that removing external contamination was relatively easy compared to purifying his own inner thoughts. Before entering infinite space, he had been cultivating the Great Destruction heart refining technique for a very long time. Yet the progress of tempering his spiritual will had been painfully slow. The clearing spirit liquid was different because, during its effects, it allowed him to continuously sort and cleanse the countless distracting thoughts that had accumulated over endless years. As the purification deepened, Luo Feng discovered that his mind contained an enormous number of thoughts, memories, emotions, and experiences. These thoughts formed his consciousness and his sense of self. He understood that true cultivation did not involve erasing these thoughts. If a person completely erased part of his consciousness, he would also be destroying part of himself. Although some cultivators chose such a path, Luo Feng refused to do so. Instead, he comprehended that true removal of distracting thoughts meant organizing them. Thoughts could not simply be divided into good and bad. Certain thoughts might be distractions when cultivating the great Tao of life origin but become valuable aids when cultivating the great Tao of destruction origin. Some thoughts strengthened one's spiritual determination, even if they were not particularly useful for cultivation. A change in one's spiritual understanding could instantly alter the value of countless thoughts. Therefore, as spiritual will became stronger, it became increasingly difficult to improve further. The clearing spirit liquid placed Luo Feng in a unique state, allowing him to observe his countless thoughts from a higher perspective and reorganize his mind. After completing this initial purification, he decided to once again study the Calamity Beast diagram that Emperor Ming had given him. Far away in infinite space, Luo Feng opened the black-red scroll. Emperor Ming himself cultivated the primordial bloodline system, yet unlike most cultivators of that path, whose emotions were often violent and unrestrained, his spiritual will was calm, steady, and unimaginably powerful. Luo Feng was convinced that Emperor Ming's spiritual will had already surpassed the ultimate realm of God King. As the scroll slowly unfolded, a dark and frenzied aura filled his surroundings. He immediately recognized that this painting corresponded to the 5th through 10th layers of the 3000 Void Calamity Beast diagram. Although the complete 3000 Void Calamity Beast diagram could be viewed through the publicly available versions, those only contained superficial insights. Even the previously obtained Tribulation Beast images had provided him with only limited understanding. This painting was completely different. Even though it depicted only 6 layers of the complete diagram, its artistic conception was many times more profound. As Luo Feng gazed at it, his consciousness was drawn into the world within the painting. He saw an extremely weak Calamity Beast struggling to survive. The beast carefully sought the protection of stronger companions. Yet those companions constantly sent it on dangerous missions to hunt for food. In the end, they consumed all the food themselves and left nothing for the weak beast. Because it was weak, the Calamity Beast had no choice but to endure humiliation and seek shelter beneath the powerful. It learned to flatter stronger creatures, make alliances, secretly steal food to survive, and hunt weaker beings. At the same time, even those it considered companions and prey constantly sought opportunities to kill and devour it. The world around the Calamity Beast was one of absolute darkness and cruelty. Death was everywhere. A moment of dissatisfaction toward the strong could lead to immediate death. Even prey could suddenly become predators and kill it. Yet through countless calamities, by relying on strength, intelligence, and luck, the beast continued to survive and gradually became stronger. Luo Feng saw not only the beast's physical growth but also the strengthening of its spirit. Hidden within these experiences was a method of cultivating spiritual will. In darkness and suffering, both inner spirit and external power could be tempered. From the experiences of the Calamity Beast, Luo Feng gained several profound insights. Sometimes, when one was weak, there was no path forward except to seek survival within death itself. Weakness was the original sin, and interests were the only eternal truth. This was the greatest enlightenment Emperor Ming had obtained after observing the shadow of the Calamity Beast. He had repeatedly studied and painted this image until he eventually derived a unique spiritual cultivation method from it. The publicly transmitted Calamity Beast diagram contained only superficial teachings. The true inheritance existed within this incomplete but deeply meaningful painting, and Emperor Ming only bestowed it upon cultivators he considered worthy. Luo Feng had risen from weakness and experienced countless life and death struggles since his youth. So he naturally resonated with the emotions of the Calamity Beast. Although his experiences had not been as cruel, there was still a deep connection. Soon, his spirit completely merged with the painting. He transformed into the Calamity Beast itself and personally experienced its endless darkness and suffering. Through these trials, his spiritual will became even stronger and more resilient. At the same time, in Wushang city of the Shi Kingdom, the ancestor of Wushang was investigating Luo He's background. He discovered that Luo He appeared to have no family or tribe and maintained close relationships with only 3 people: the old servant Luo Sa, a man named Yuan, and his disciple Moyu Qingyan. This made the ancestor suspicious. He considered 2 possibilities. Luo He might be the reincarnation of an ancient powerhouse concealing his identity. Or he might be a cultivator from the primordial cosmos whose tribe still remained in his original universe. Since there had never been any known ancient expert who cultivated the great Taoes of life, destruction, and matter simultaneously, the ancestor was unable to determine Luo He's true identity. Nevertheless, his hatred toward Luo He had already reached an extreme level. He had paid an enormous price and exhausted favors owed by the Emperor of Tian Kun in order to obtain his opportunity within infinite space. He had even been willing to offer compensation. Yet Luo He still destroyed his body and ruined his opportunity. Filled with murderous intent, the ancestor of Wushang decided to exact revenge. Since he could not deal with Luo He directly, he would first kill Luo He's servant and disciple. If he ever found Luo He's tribe in the future, he intended to exterminate them entirely. He immediately contacted the Shadow Sky Realm, the most mysterious and feared assassination organization in the land of origin. The organization was so powerful that it had once deployed an emperor-level combatant, shocking the entire land of origin and proving that it possessed strength comparable to the 2 ancient countries. After receiving his request, Shadow Sky Realm even offered to assassinate Great Saint Luo He himself. Since Luo He had an avatar within Chu capital, the organization estimated only a 50% chance of success, and the price was 1,000 primordial crystals. The ancestor of Wushang was stunned by the cost and immediately rejected the proposal. Instead, he requested only the deaths of Luo Sa and Moyu Qingyan. Shadow Sky Realm quoted a price of 500 billion cosmic sand for killing Luo Sa and 100 billion cosmic sand for killing Moyu Qingyan. They even offered to destroy all of Luo Sa's avatars at the same price. But the ancestor decided that spending 500 billion cosmic sand on an old servant was too extravagant. In the end, he agreed to pay 600 billion cosmic sand for the assassinations and demanded immediate action. Meanwhile, in infinite space, while Luo Feng was still comprehending the Calamity Beast diagram, the mark on his palm suddenly transmitted new information. His evaluation had been updated. Because he had mastered and fought using Emperor-level secret techniques, his Great Tao evaluation was upgraded to average, earning him 100 reward points. More importantly, infinite space had judged that his spiritual will had reached the threshold of the ultimate realm of God King despite him still being only in the primal chaos realm. As a result, his spiritual will evaluation became high grade, and he was rewarded with an astonishing 10,000 points. After adding all his previous earnings and subtracting the 30 points he had spent on the World Life Form exchange, Luo Feng's total reward points reached 10.192.34. Looking at the enormous increase in points, Luo Feng could not help but smile. He realized that breakthroughs in spiritual will and the creation of new branches of the Great Tao were by far the most efficient methods of earning reward points, vastly surpassing the rewards gained from hunting native life forms. Suddenly, he had become much wealthier within infinite space. Luo Feng activated the mark in his hand and examined the infinite space treasure vault, where cultivators could only view resources that matched their current reward points. He discovered that perfection-level inheritances for the second realm of Godly King generally required around 10,000 reward points, while special-grade inheritances cost about 3,000 points. Upper-class inheritances for the second realm cost roughly 500 points, and intermediate inheritances for the ultimate realm of God King required only around 2,000 points. After seeing these prices, Luo Feng finally understood the enormous value of the gifts Emperor Chu had given him. The complete inheritances of 8 Tribulations life form and extermination of 72 blades up to the ultimate realm of God King were worth approximately 20,000 reward points. He also understood why the powerhouses of the 2 ancient countries regarded infinite space as an ordinary treasure site. They could easily access upper-class inheritances within their own countries, while the real attraction of infinite space lay in its perfection and special-grade inheritances, which were extremely difficult to obtain. Reward points were incredibly hard to earn. A primal chaos realm cultivator whose spiritual will reached the ultimate realm of God King would receive 10,000 points, while a first realm godly king with the same level of spiritual will would receive only 1,000 points. Ancient beings usually accumulated points by repeatedly hunting native creatures over extremely long periods of time. Now that he had sufficient wealth, Luo Feng immediately exchanged for 3 additional special grade inheritances. Life Evolution Map, which focused entirely on the Great Tao of Life origin and possessed even deeper research into life than World Life Form, Chaos Whole Beast Body. Centered on the Great Tao of Destruction origin and capable of cultivating an extraordinarily powerful body, and Destruction Wanderer, a path that pursued ultimate destruction. As a result, Luo Feng now possessed 2 special grade inheritances related to the Great Tao of Life origin, namely World Life Form and Life Evolution Map, and 2 inheritances related to the Great Tao of Destruction origin, namely Chaos Whole Beast Body and Destruction Wanderer. He also noticed that both perfection and special grade inheritances only extended to the ultimate realm of God King. Any teachings beyond that realm required direct instruction from their creators, while only upper-class inheritances contained content that surpassed the ultimate realm of God King. Luo Feng hoped these new inheritances would allow his life form to evolve further. During his 100 eras of secluded cultivation, he had already accumulated profound insights into his triune form and had derived 6 different forms. His new goal was to comprehend the most perfect 10 directions world form within the primal chaos realm. This form contained the mysteries of all 6 major branches of life and theoretically required all 6 branches to reach their peaks. Even godly kings who had mastered 3 or 4 branches found it difficult to comprehend this form, making it an almost impossible challenge for Luo Feng, who had not yet mastered any Tao branch. Nevertheless, with his ultimate realm God King spiritual will, several special grade inheritances, primordial crystal spirit fruits, and clearing spirit liquids, he believed that even failure would still temper and improve his comprehension. Meanwhile, in Jong City, Moyu Qingyan and his wife Zhang Yongge received an extraordinarily warm welcome from the Zhang family. They originally intended to stay only a short time but ultimately remained for more than 1,000 days because countless relatives and friends wished to entertain them. Eventually, the couple departed for Huyang City aboard a flying boat together with Morosa and several servants. As the flying boat traveled through the void, a hidden shadow silently followed it from a distance. The shadow had waited patiently because Jong City was heavily protected by powerful formations and was not a suitable place to launch an attack. On the flying boat, Morosa was leisurely enjoying the service of his disciple and his wife when he suddenly sensed a powerful hidden existence approaching through layers of space. Judging by the opponent's methods, he concluded that the enemy was either a godly king or a cultivator who had transcended primal chaos realm. Unable to understand why such a powerful figure would target them, Morosa suspected that the enemy's true objective was Luo Feng. He immediately sent a message to his master, warning that he would soon be unable to continue concealing his own strength. Luo Feng immediately stopped cultivating and directed most of his consciousness toward the water drop mark he had left on Moyu Qingyan's hand. To the astonishment of Moyu Qingyan and Zhang Yongge, the mark transformed into a real droplet and flew out of his palm. At that very moment, a vague shadow penetrated the walls of the flying boat and attempted to seize Moyu Qingyan, Zhang Yongge, and Morosa. Luo Feng's voice suddenly rang out, and the droplet instantly expanded into a water droplet cage that trapped the intruder. Forced to reveal himself, the shadow recognized Luo Feng and admitted that he had not expected Luo Feng to leave an avatar to protect his disciple. Because the opponent had completely concealed his aura and identity, Luo Feng could not determine who he was. When Luo Feng questioned whether he was an assassin, the shadow admitted that he belonged to the Shadow Sky Realm. He then declared that his true body would descend and challenged Luo Feng to see whether he could protect his disciple and servant. The water droplet cage immediately contracted and completely annihilated the shadow's manifested form. The droplet then transformed into Luo Feng's figure. Morosa, Moyu Qingyan, and Zhang Yongge respectfully greeted him. But Luo Feng ignored them and looked into the distance. He could already sense an extremely powerful aura descending nearby and realized that the old enemy's true body had finally arrived. Luo Feng sensed an extremely terrifying pressure descending from the void, a force capable of corroding and annihilating everything as if it could erase all matter and laws of reality. In that instant, he clearly understood that if his true body were present, he could still withstand it directly. But now only an avatar was here, greatly reducing his confidence. He immediately transmitted a message to Morosa, instructing him to prepare the backup plan. This plan relied on their shared ability of formlessness and intangibility, allowing them to exchange identities. Morosa would transform into Luo Feng to face the enemy head-on, while Luo Feng would shift into concealment to prepare for the worst-case scenario. Morosa was initially somewhat excited, seeing it as a chance to display his true strength. But Luo Feng remained calm, judging that the situation had not yet reached that point. After leaving the flying boat, Luo Feng stood in midair unarmed, his gaze cold and fixed ahead. Inside the flying boat, Moyu Qingyan, Zhang Yongge, and the guards were all watching tensely. A massive gray cloud soon appeared in the distance, radiating an evil aura that seemed capable of contaminating the entire world. Luo Feng immediately recognized that this was no ordinary existence. He had heard of the Shadow Sky Realm before, a mysterious assassin organization specializing in concealment and high-level assassinations. He coldly asked who had hired them to target his servant and disciple. But the enemy only laughed and refused to reveal the employer, stating that the Shadow Sky Realm never disclosed its clients. What caught Luo Feng's attention was that the enemy openly intended to kill his disciple and subordinate right in front of him. As an ultimate provocation, the gray cloud then erupted with power, dyeing the world into a dead ash-gray color while distorting all natural laws. Even inside the flying boat, Moyu Qingyan and Zhang Yongge felt their vitality being suppressed to the extreme, as if they would instantly perish if touched by that gray domain. In response, Luo Feng activated the water droplet world, forming a colossal domain spanning trillions of kilometers that protected the flying boat while suppressing the spreading gray corruption. This technique stemmed from the world life form inheritance, with the droplet form being especially suited for large-scale battlefield control and long-range offense. The enemy immediately sensed the suppression and increased his power, charging directly into the center of the water droplet world at overwhelming speed, crushing space itself. Luo Feng understood that his water droplet world could not withstand a direct collision. So he decisively split it into 360 independent avatars. Each avatar became a complete droplet, within which billions of particles formed a perfected primal chaos-level structure. When empowered by godly king-level strength, each droplet could unleash power far beyond the primal chaos realm. Instantly, all 360 Luo Feng avatars transformed into sword light, executing the technique, Blade River Slash, Life and Death Reincarnation. The sword lights surged like a cascading river, forming a complete sword formation that continuously struck the gray cloud. This was not a single-point attack but a perfectly synchronized 360 avatar formation. With his spiritual will having reached the ultimate realm of a god king and further enhanced by the primordial crystal spirit fruit in clearing spirit liquid. Luo Feng could maintain this entire formation simultaneously. The gray cloud trembled violently, shocked that an avatar could unleash such power. However, its true body possessed immense energy reserves and gradually withstood and consumed all 360 blade lights. Eventually, the sword formation was shattered, breaking the temporary balance. The enemy laughed and declared that this was the limit of an avatar and that Luo Feng's disciple and subordinate would still die. Inside the flying boat, everyone fell into extreme tension. Moyu Qingyan prepared for death, while Morosa grew increasingly eager to activate the backup plan. However, Luo Feng remained calm, stating it was not yet time. At that critical moment, he observed carefully and discovered the enemy's fatal weakness. His spiritual will was not strong. Only at the first realm God-King level. This was the decisive flaw. Without hesitation, Luo Feng unleashed the Lai Yuan technique. A gigantic star of spiritual will pressure appeared in the enemy's mind, crushing his consciousness completely. The clash of wills destroyed the enemy's soul entirely without leaving any trace. As his will collapsed, the massive gray cloud disintegrated, revealing its true form, a dense, liquid-like mass of gray fog still corroding the surrounding space. Morosa was stunned to see the enemy completely destroyed by a single will-based technique. Luo Feng approached and collected the gray fog, confirming it was the enemy's core body. Morosa immediately requested it for consumption, as devouring a god-king from a different cultivation path would greatly enhance his strength. Luo Feng agreed but first decided to study it and ordered strict secrecy regarding the death of this god-king. This marked the first time Luo Feng had fully killed a god-king since entering the land of origin. However, he also understood that his success depended on the enemy's relatively weak spiritual will. If it had been only 30 to 50% stronger, the outcome could have been very different.